today's show, Deni Avdija meets the media in Portland. We talk about how much and where he'll help the Trailblazers this season. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're talking Deni Avdija. Deni in the building. Turbo makes it to Portland, and he meets the media. Speaks with the assembled media out of the Trailblazers practice facility. He was introduced in maybe a less formal way than some other times. So we'll talk about Deni's introduction and then where he's going to help, specifically kind of based on what the roster looks like right now, the specific ways that Deni Avdija will help the Trailblazers, the on-court basketball stuff that he can do to help this team. And then I want to ask the question to end the show. How much better are the Trailblazers? How much better are the Trailblazers? They've made some moves this summer, a draft pick and a big trade, but a big-ish trade. How much better are they? That's what we'll do to close the show. Let's talk Deni, though, to kick things off here, to begin the program. Deni meets the media. Just as like a side note, it wasn't a press conference. It was like a scrum. As a media person, I prefer the scrum. I prefer the scrums. The press conference, you pass a microphone around sometimes. You get questions like, "So, have you been to Voodoo Donuts yet?" From people who are like maybe otherwise not going to ask questions, but they get to wait their turn and have their voice be heard. The scrum rewards the organized and the professional and folks who kind of know the art of working a scrum. That's like neither here nor there, but I'll just throw it out there. A couple takeaways from Deni's meeting with the media. One, he had an interesting tidbit about finding out about getting traded away from the Wizards. He was back home in Israel. It was 2 a.m, and his people woke him up, I guess. He didn't specify who, but like his crew, his family, friends, whoever he might be there with, woke him up. Middle of the night in Israel, they say, "Hey, Adrian Wojnarowski says that you've been traded. You're headed to Portland." No heads up from the Washington Wizards, front office. This was sprung on him. He found out like you found out via social media. That's weird. That's a weird way to have it sprung on you. He said he didn't sleep the rest of the night. He was kind of processing it and figuring out what's next for him because, and I think we forget this a lot. Like, these are people, right? Like, he was envisioning, I'm about to begin a 4-year contract. I've got a chance. The Wizards are going to look really different next year. They're beginning this, maybe not really different. They haven't done a lot of stuff, but different next year. And I have a chance to kind of step into this major role on the team that in year 5 of the NBA, it's like, no, you're going to Portland. Going to Portland. Totally new situation. And I would say that Deni came across in the interview as I would say miffed with the way it ended in Washington. He believed, to hear him tell it, that he was a big part of the organization with the Wizards, that he was a big part of, they drafted him, they grew him for 4 years, and helped him grow for 4 years. He should get some credit too. Helped him grow for 4 years, signed him to a contract extension, and was like, he was going to be. This is what you dream of when you draft a guy top 10, is that he gets better every single year, and then you get to sign him to a contract, in this case, a pretty darn cheap contract for how good he is. And like, he's on the team for 8 years, and you get to figure out if his career will continue beyond that. And like, that's kind of like the whole point of drafting somebody who's talented, and yet they trade him. He seemed a little, I'd say miffed, not like pissed. It wasn't like, and even when pressed on it by reporters, I don't think Deni was like, "Yeah, I'm going to crush the Wizards for giving up on me." But it was notably like, yeah, DC was home. That was where my home was. And now I'm traded and I have to make a new home. I've been in Portland for 8 hours. And now I have to find a new home. I believe he came in last night, but, on Sunday evening. But like, it's like, he's got to, he's got to figure out what's next for him. It's like a lot of change very quickly, very suddenly. Come back to the States and kind of and transition your life all the way across the country. He was was miffed. He was a little miffed. I think you could tell that he was surprised and perhaps a little bit hurt by the fact that the Wizards kind of gave up on him in a way. But he mentioned something that I liked, and I thought it was a notable comment, is that he felt sort of, I don't have the exact quote in front of me. I didn't transcribe it. I apologize. But is that he was kind of honored, like he's mentioning the Blazers gave up a lot to get him, and what then that meant that, they really wanted him and why that was meaningful to him. The Blazers played a relatively hefty price, couple first round picks, couple second round picks, and a veteran in Malcolm Brogdon. Like he wasn't a throw in. Deni was someone they clearly targeted. If you trade 4 draft picks and an NBA player to get him, clearly somebody you really want. I think being valued by the Blazers would be something meaningful to Deni. And then when asked to kind of describe his game and give fans an introduction to whom he might be on the court, he really emphasized in a couple iterations of that question, a couple of different versions of that question, is how much he's going to be a competitive force. He's someone who loves basketball, loves to win, and loves to play hard. And then he was asked a question I thought was pretty interesting. This one by Casey Holdall of Trailblazers.com about playing in a situation like Washington, where the team's not very good. Are there lessons you can learn from that you can apply to come to Portland? And we'll talk about, I think the Blazers are a little bit better than they were last year. I think they've improved. I think Denny's a big part of that improvement. But Portland's probably not going to be a team that sneaks into the play-in, right? They're also a developmental team. They want to be young and be in the top of the draft again, and then make their climb the following season or the following seasons. But they don't have aspirations. They don't have postseason aspirations next year. Let's just be honest, right? And Deni said, part of it is just, one, cherishing the wins. Cherishing the wins. You might win 25 times the year, 30 times a year. That means if you win 30 games, it means you had 52 nights where you came to work and lost. And that's a lot. That'll wear on you. That can wear on you. So as part of it, it's just the mentality of being mature, of just hey, this is going to be hard. I'm going to cherish these wins. And when we do get smacked around a little bit, because it's a talent league, and sometimes you just don't have the talent to compete or whatever it might be, mostly that, it's you have to be mature enough to say, okay, this isn't going to crush me. I'm going to come back tomorrow and bring it and be a professional, and not let the sort of hangover of losing and the challenge of having, losing 15 of 20 over the course of a month. Not that kill your professionalism, kill your work ethic, kill your focus, kill your deteriorate your ability to want to get better. And I thought that was a really interesting response. I'm kind of paraphrasing there. It was a shorter response than I just explained, but I thought it was really interesting from Deni about it. The professionalism it takes to play on a team that is still trying to find its way. What he didn't really talk about too much was his specific fit on the roster and how he'll play off of some of the Blazers players. And that might be because he doesn't know who's going to be around. And I think that's fair to say, well, it's a little unsettled right now. The roster's full, and if this is the group, then but you don't know if it's going to be the group. And I think Summer League starts this weekend, and you get kind of every NBA team in person in Vegas. This is much more likely to see some transactions go down, particularly kind of minor deals and maybe some moderate-sized deals. I think the Blazers are in the moderate-sized deal camp with a couple of their trades. Big for them, maybe moderate-sized for the rest of the league. But, Deni didn't, when asked kind of various versions of that question about how he fits and his relationship with guys, it's he didn't speak to that too strongly. But what he did say was that he expects to be a big part of this, which I think is kind of the unspoken part, is they traded all them picks for me, I'm going to start. And I think that's that's obvious, right? I think that's a very obvious thing. But how he fits, I think, quite frankly, he might not have really given it some specific consideration because it's so new and so fresh, right? It's I got traded a couple weeks ago. I came back to the States. I showed up here and I'm meeting everybody. He said he went out to dinner last night. The Blazers met him at the airport and they went out to dinner and they kind of chatted. And it's I'm sure they discussed their vision and stuff, but they probably just kind of get him comfortable. Here's how we do things. What do you like to do? Here's what the city is like. If you want to, if you're looking for a house, these are the places that either we recommend or, kind of just settle in, welcome to a new job type of thing. And then you get into the basketball shortly thereafter. I'm sure they talked hoops. They're hoops people. That's what they talk about. But Deni didn't really, in his media availability, get into the specifics. I want to do that here. Let's talk about where Deni helps. I think he's going to be help. First of all, much like him, I expect him to be a starter and a big minute guy. Like that's a fairly obvious one, right? Like, that one is obvious. So like where he plays, duh. But like how specifically on the court he helps. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Join me there, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Whether you are going through an acute traumatic event, a major trauma in your life, or just trying to navigate the challenges and trials and tribulations of everyday living, therapy can be incredibly valuable. We have a tendency to compare ourselves to who we were before, who we want to be in the future, those around us, and comparison is the thief of joy. What therapy can help you do is kind of eliminate that comparison, or the desire to compare, and start to focus in on the tools you can use to live a better version or the best version of your life. Think of it like routine maintenance for your car. You take your car in for 25,000, 50,000, 75,000, 100,000 mile checkups just to make sure that thing's running smoothly. And when your car is in an accident or has a major problem, you also take it in to get looked at. So whether it is routine maintenance or a big bump in the road, let BetterHelp, or perhaps the therapist at BetterHelp more specifically, kind of help you, guide you along. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient and flexible and suited to your schedule. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, let's talk Deni. How he's going to help. As I mentioned, he wasn't super specific about how he sees himself helping. I thought he was much more interesting and I think this is always the case with basketball, with like getting to know new players on the team. It's like the emotional stuff, how the Wizards trade impacted him, where he found out that it happened, and like what lessons he learned in the first 4 years in his career. But the X's and O's stuff matters, and I think that is interesting. It's just it's a day 3 conversation as opposed to a day 1 conversation. So here's the how I think Deni helps on both sides of the ball. First of all, point of attack defense. Last year, the Blazers basically had one dude who would get all of those assignments. One, and then eventually Chris Murray. But it was Toumani Camara. Like, Toumani just got every tough defensive assignment. Whoever it was, it's going to be you, and when you can't do it, Toumani, it's going to be a little bit of Matisse Thybulle, and when you can't do it, Matisse, we'll figure it out from there. And then with injuries and just like the fact that you've got to switch around lineups, other guys got opportunities, chances, whatever it might be, to kind of to get a crack at it. But like the first choice was Toumani Camara until later in the season. Then eventually they started giving those opportunities to Chris Murray. And more on this in a bit, but like I don't think Chris Murray is going to be part of the rotation if the roster doesn't change fairly dramatically in the next few months. Like if it were start today, Chris Murray's not going to play on night 1. So it's going to be Deni, and he's going to get those opportunities. I don't think he's like, I don't think he's like elite against guards, but he can, like, the way that you could ask Toumani to guard point guards, you can ask Deni to guard point guards. And having multiple options of that. Like when the Blazers played the Wizards, if you look back, Deni, they put him on Scoot. They said, stop the fast point guard guy, right? Like stop the ball, stop the action. They put him on the like lead assignments. He's probably going to get more of that there, and that's really going to be beneficial, because if it's not just Toumani and it's not just Deni, or it's 48 minutes of either Toumani and Deni, or you have them together, then you get you're just like your point of attack defense is automatically going to be a little bit better. And that helps in a couple different ways. It helps because it's not like overtaxing Toumani Camara, and Deni Avdija is like a much better offensive player than Toumani Camara. So like you can put a point of attack defender out there that also can help on the other end. More on that in a moment. But like it allows Matisse Thybulle to play in an off-ball role where he doesn't have to sit down and guard, and his skills as an off-ball like disruptor, that's where you get the best version of Matisse Thybulle. Jeremy Grant is not suited as like a primary point of attack defender. He can be a good help defender and a good team defender, but like if you put him in point of attack situations a bunch, you're going to watch him struggle. You're not going to be maximizing his gifts. And another thing, this helps the bigs. Like the Blazers are probably going to play a lot of like switch 1 through 4, but the 5-man drops. Like the 5-man is not at the level of the screen. He drops back. So if they set 1-5, 2-5, 3-5 screens, that's then the center, be it Donovan Clingan or a lot of DeAndre Ayton, they're going to be not up at the level of the screen, but below the screen, playing like a soft drop. They don't play like super, super soft, but kind of soft. And the best drop coverages, like they do in Minnesota, work because the ball pressure. They work because the guys chasing the ball handler stay attached, work to stay attached, and make it really tough to get around screens and get clean. And then you have a big person standing in the paint and saying, if you do get free, you're in trouble, and you kind of zone up for a second as they get back and attached. And having two guys who are capable of that in Avdija and Toumani Camara gives the Blazers a chance to play better functional defense and maximize the gifts of their centers. Like Clingan, I think, young guys kind of might struggle in the league. I think foul trouble and stuff could be hard for him in year one, but he profiles someone who's going to be a pretty darn good drop big defender. And Ayton's the best version of DeAndre Ayton is like an active, engaged, getting in passing lanes. He's not really a shot blocker, but he gets some steals. And just like be big and mobile around the rim, like get in the way type of defense. And you can play that if you can play a better version of that if you have defenders who stay attached and fight through and drop coverage. Allows you to switch a little bit because Deni Avdija has some positional versatility, like he can guard 1 through 4 relatively easily. He's not gonna lock up every single position, but he's like a capable defender at guarding all of those spots, and having more of those type of guys is going to be valuable. So you're still switchy. You get another point of attack option other than Toumani Camara, who doesn't take as much away on offense, and you kind of maximize some of the skill sets of your other players. That's helpful. That way, Deni Avdija will help. On offense, it's a little bit tricky, and in part because of the Blazers' personnel. Like, the very basic thing is shooting improvement. Is that Avdija will continue his, last year was the best shooting season of his career, propped up mostly by hitting basically half of his corner 3-pointers. Didn't shoot above league average, above the break. He was a below league average shooter above the break, but in the corners he was money. And that means he can play an off-ball role and make teams pay, particularly you put him in the weak side. It's like that dude makes half his corner threes. You don't want to help that far off of him. And that keeps a defender out of the paint. That keeps guys more engaged on the backside, so drivers can get in the paint. Like, his threat should be helpful, and I think that's really key. Is like the threat of a guy in the corner. Again, 40 according to Cleaning the Glass, Deni Avdija shot 48% on corner threes. That's crucial in an off-ball role. Is fear, right? Get that volume up a little bit higher and continue to, he doesn't need to make half, but if he shoots 40%, and the plus 40% on corner threes, that's starts to be really, really helpful. Avdija mentioned that one of the ways that he hasn't changed anything mechanically in his shot, but last summer, heading into his fourth year in the league with the Wizards, he focused primarily on shooting. That was the number one. He said, I have to be a better shooter, and he had the best shooting season of his career. If that continues, if he regresses a little bit, that's kind of natural with NBA players, then we'll kind of figure it out as we go when the season starts, and we'll kind of talk about how it works. But if he's in that general range of what he shot last year, really, really helpful. And he talks about his focus, and it's just maturity level is to tell yourself, I am a good shooter, and have that confidence and play with that confidence and know that you put the work in. That's what you want from a young guy. Say what I learned is you work your butt off, and then you trust the work you put in, and you have the maturity to keep playing through it and trust the work you put in. I mean, that was one of his sort of stronger answers in terms of basketball X's and O's stuff. It's that he said mostly for shooting for him it became a mental thing, a mental hurdle that he kind of was able to overcome and shoot well. And you build your confidence. When you build your confidence, it all flows from there. I think that helps, right? And so the shooting is the big thing for Deni. And I mentioned that because when if he's going to play next to Scoot Henderson, he can't have the ball in his hands all the time. Like, I think there's a version of him which gets some point forward duties, and I think particularly when he shares the floor with just Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe, assuming the roster is the same, then you can give him the ball and let him be like a true point forward. But with Scoot, he's just not a good off-ball player. The way you're going to get the most out of Scoot is kind of give him the ball and let him be a decision maker. So Deni has to kind of morph, and that's going to be some of his value on offense. Can he shift between off-ball role when he's playing with this non-shooting playmaker point guard like Scoot and be a shooter in the corner and keep the floor spaced and be valuable for Scoot, and then make decisions on the second side. Scoot, drive, kick, Deni, now your ball in your hands, but not like the initial primary creator. When you share the court with Anthony Simons, like when he shares the court with Anthony Simons and Shaedon Sharpe, having him be the primary creator, so Shaedon Sharpe plays an off-ball role that he's shown to be pretty good at in terms of reading screens and just like working pin downs, and Anthony Simons, who sometimes like the pressure of bringing the ball up the court can kind of take him out of what he wants to do, and he's a really good off-ball player, kind of have him be continue an off-ball role, but and him kind of toggle between primary and secondary creator with Deni and maximize everybody's skills. I think that versatility helps in theory. It really helps in theory. I think it's probably, and I want to talk about this in the third segment to close the show, but it's like Deni has some skills and some boxes to check, particularly with the shooting, that like really, really would be helpful. I think the defense and the versatility there is going to be really useful. I think the offense is a bigger question mark, but if he hits the high notes with everything, if he hits the ceiling with everything, really useful for a variety of pairings, and his versatility on that end, super key, because then you can just say like, here's what we need. Can you do it? And Deni can be an answer in the way that the Blazers' other wings simply cannot. Like, he checks a box that none of the other dudes on the roster do. That's really valuable. But it brings me to the question that I want to close the show with. How much better is this team? Deni Avdija is an upgrade on the wing. How much better are the Trailblazers? Let's answer that question to close the show. Join me in that third segment, won't you? First, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Listen, sports slow down a little bit in the summer, but they don't really go anywhere. You still got WNBA games each and every week. You got MLB games, Major League Baseball games, every stinking day. And this weekend, you're going to get Summer League games for about 10 days in Vegas, closing in on 2 weeks if you get all the way to the championship game. And whatever you're looking for, FanDuel is going to have action for you. All summer long, FanDuel is hooking up all customers. That's new and returning customers, all customers, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. It's FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's answer the question. How much better are the Trailblazers? This is a layered question because I don't think it's as simple as like this player better, team better. Deni is better than the other options that the Blazers otherwise would have had starting at the forward spots. Also, I want to obvious caveat here. The roster's probably going to change between now, you are listening to Tuesday, July 9th show, between now and the fall. Even if a minor change. I don't know if I would be shocked if the roster is identical, but it seems pretty unlikely, right? Like, I think they're going to do something. So with the caveat that the roster might change, if the roster stands as it is today, I think your starting lineup night one is Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Deni Avdija, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton. Off the bench, Matisse Thybulle, Shaedon Sharpe, Toumani Camara, and Donovan Clingan. That's your top 9. Then 10th is Robert Williams and Jabari Walker, like alternating. Williams would be the obvious 10th guy, but I'm uncertain about his availability and all of that, right? But he would be the obvious 10th guy. Chauncey Billups likes to play 9, but I think if Rob Williams is healthy and ready to go, they'll probably play 10 to begin the year, and then they'll figure it out. That would move Jabari Walker to 11th. And then you've got to drop down to backups. Like, he's not going to play 11. No team like can consistently play 11. Shout out to Monty Williams. He played 11 in the first quarter a bunch of nights for the Pistons. But like 10 is even a deep rotation in the NBA. 9 is really fairly normal. 9.5 has been a pretty typical Billups rotation where you play 10 guys in the first half and 9 in the second half. So like, you play a 10th guy, but he plays seven total minutes in the game. It's like Jabari Walker's out of the rotation on night 1. Chris Murray's out of the rotation on night 1. Ryan Rupert, Duop Reith, Delano Banton. That's the end of your bench, right? But and I don't think, even though like, and this is a question for another day, if Anthony Simons on the roster, he's going to start. Get over it. But like with that group, I think the starting lineup makes some sense. The guards are small, and that's a problem for the future. But that's like just that's their plight right now. But I think one of the questions with how much better are the Blazers is like they lost their best 3-point shooter. Anthony Simons is probably their best like overall 3-point shooter in terms of shooting threes off the dribble and the difficulty of threes and catch and shoot guys. But just like raw percentage wise, Malcolm Brogdon was their best 3-point shooter last season. Like he's really good, and he's been like he has a body of work to suggest he's a much better 3-point shooter than Deni Avdija. They're different players, but I think that is one question. It's like the Blazers were the worst 3-point shooting team in the NBA last year. Missing a really solid shooter will hurt a little bit, but what you're really banking on here is not that you run it back with the exact same results. It's that there's internal improvement. It's that Scoot Henderson, who was like really bad to begin the year, and DeAndre Ayton was really bad to begin the year, but he ended up being like good, and Scoot Henderson ended up looking like, okay, I can kind of squint and see what the future is, but I don't think he was like ever had a stretch where it was like, yes, this dude's going to be a star or whatever. Not that DA did either, but very different, right? Like in terms of like levels of production and consistency, DA incredibly consistent on offense, Scoot like flashes of what might be, right? You're really banking that Scoot takes a step forward. You're really banking that Shaedon Sharpe comes back healthy and is consistent. His highs have been really good. They've been short-lived. You want consistent production. If those two dudes pop and are significantly better, that changes the whole trajectory, right? Like that changes the whole thing. And so much of are the Blazers better hinges on those two youngsters taking this team to a level that they weren't able to get to next season. But like, I don't think the Blazers are worse than they were last year. I think just swapping out like Klingon and maybe little Rob Williams for the Moses Brown Duop Reith minutes, and Reith is still on the team, so he can still play, but like swapping out those backup center minutes might add some more value. And I think what Deni really does, and this is his value, is that he balances the lineup. You've now got big forwards in your starting lineup that can play both ends, offense and defense, as opposed to the Blazers who were running, toggling in forwards who just were negatives on offense, with Jabari Walker and Chris Murray and Toumani Camara. They were fun and easy to root for, but they were negatives on offense. Like I think that's undeniable. Deni is way better than them. That is a big, serious upgrade. The shooting remains a question mark for across the whole team, and Deni's shooting is a big question mark. Like if he can maintain it, if he does, it really lessens the blow of losing Malcolm Brogdon. But even if he doesn't, just the ability, like more ball handling, another guy who can really pass, another good decision maker, and another point of attack defender, just it gives you so much more balance. Like it like I mentioned in the second segment, it puts Tease in a better role. It puts Jeremy Grant in a better role. It puts less on Toumani Camara's plate, so he can have a much narrower ask and really like give you what he does like Toumani as a energy defense guy who can like play 20 minutes, but really go all out is like probably a lot more valuable than like, we need 30 minutes of you guarding the best players in the world. I think it just gives you so much more optionality. The way this team gets better is not Deni, but the floor is raised by the balance that Deni brings, right? Like Deni's going to help. He's going to help. Avdija's going to help because of the versatility that I mentioned, because of, I think, what he does on defense, particularly in helping. I'm not sure he's like this crazy home run that some people are painting him as, but I do think he's an upgrade. It's undeniable he's an upgrade. And if that versatility alone and that upgrade alone there on defense and the versatility that he adds to the offense, the sort of balance that he adds to their offensive attack, if that is coupled with a big step forward by Scoot Henderson and a big step forward by Shaedon Sharpe, the Blazers are better, undeniably. Like there's no way they're worse. I think they're better today. It's just how much better are they? And that's kind of hard for me to say. It's a classic Mike Richmond way to end a podcast, is to pose a question right at the top of the show and answer it with, I don't really know. But here's what I'll say. I think the Blazers are better, but I'm not sure that their record will reflect that for a couple reasons. One, the West, while teams got worse, the Clippers got worse, the Warriors are worse. I think that the Nuggets are a little bit worse. Those teams are still far enough ahead of the Blazers that it's like the overall impact on Portland in the standings seems relatively unlikely. Memphis is going to get better. Houston is likely to get better, although Houston's a candidate to take a step backwards or have like a lateral year. San Antonio is probably going to be a lot better. Blazers finished 15th in the West. I'm having a hard time seeing them leapfrog 5 teams to even finish 10th, much less higher in the play-in. But that doesn't mean they won't improve. They might end up like somewhere between the 13th and 15th best team in the Western Conference yet again, right? Like I think that's like a totally reasonable spot for them to be. So measuring their improvement is probably not like, did they win a 34th game and do you feel really good about them because it's like they avoided a 50-loss season or whatever. Sure, that'd be fun. Like, it's more fun when teams win. I think like tanking is a real scourge. But I don't think the Blazers improved dramatically enough to hop up into the postseason picture. I don't think the team harbors that belief either. And if you do, good on you for optimism. But like, I think they can take real steps in terms of like these lineups make sense. This Deni Avdija helps our young players play the best version of themselves. This works and we can move with this. And then they have improved. If the record doesn't improve, if the process by which they lose games gets them to a better spot because they're playing lineups that are more complementary to the skill sets needed for their young core players to be the best version of themselves. And if Deni not only helps, Scoot and Shea do that, but also proves to be a very obvious part of their young core players that are improving at his age, like, this is going to be a season where you say the Blazers are way better than they were a year ago. Way better, way more fun, way more enjoyable, and all those things. And they still might be the 14th best team in the Western Conference, right? They still might end up with one of the 5 worst records in the NBA. I think that's a totally reasonable outcome that it could feel good and look the same. And here's the other reason: it's like, how much better are they? This franchise will brazenly lose games, Like they've showed that they're like totally shameless in their ability to say, we're going to lose 14 of 15 to close the season, so help us. So like, I don't want to predict like, oh, they're going to make this massive leap in wins, because I actually think the team will, like, at some point in March and April say, we've won too many games, everybody get out of here. And we've seen them do it. Like, it's like they're one of the most like brazen post All-Star losers that we've seen over the last few seasons in the league. So like, it's all about fit and function in the first half of the season, and don't get caught up in the final record, because I think the Blazers can improve a lot in how they go about things, even if the overall record doesn't reflect it, and the overall sort of end of the season ends up with one of the worst records in the league. I think you'll still probably be able to sit here and say the Deni trade worked. Here's why it worked. This team is better because of it. That's how Deni helps. And I think how much the Blazers have improved is some. It's some. Okay, that's going to do it for today's show. That's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.